I mean, that's their bottom rung. Why aren't we talking about their top rung, right? So the power of the mind is clearly tremendous when it comes to function in the body. And I'll tell you, I'll give you another reference to that too. There was a study done on a woman with multiple personality disorder. Did I talk to you guys about this? We talked about it. This woman had like, I don't know, 11, 12, 13 different personalities, and in one of them, say her name was really Mary Smith. In one of these personalities, she was Jean, whatever. And in that personality, she thought that she was a diabetic. And in that personality, she became an insulin-dependent diabetic. And if she didn't get insulin, she was going to die. That's just because she thought she was an insulin-dependent diabetic. So, her pancreas literally stopped producing insulin. Is that unbelievable? So I think the power of the mind is just so much of it is not understood, and I think that getting into understanding ourselves better is what we have to do to work toward being healthier. And one more great example of this is that they did a study on Japanese children allergic to a poison ivy-like plant. They were in this experiment where the leaf of the poisonous plant was rubbed onto one forearm, and as a control, the non-poisonous leaf, resembling the toxic plant, was rubbed on the other forearm. And as expected, they say almost all of the children broke out in a rash on the arm rubbed with the toxic leaf and had no response to the imposter leaf. What the children did not know was that the leaves were purposefully mislabeled. The negative thought of being touched by the poisonous plant led to the rash produced by the non-toxic leaf. In the majority of cases, no rash resulted from contact with the toxic leaf that was thought to be the harmless control. Is that incredible? So the conclusion is simple. Positive perceptions enhance health. Negative perceptions precipitate disease. And he says this mind-bending example of the power of belief was one of the founding experiments that led to the science of psychoneuroimmunology. He says almost all of us have unknowingly acquired limiting, self-sabotaging misperceptions that undermine our strength, health, and desires. And that is why I think it's important to talk about this stuff, because if we limit ourselves in the way we think, and we're never really going to put ourselves out there to be, willing to learn more information, open ourselves to that, then we're never going to change the way we feel about something. And if we don't change the way we feel, we'll never act any differently. So that, to me, is so exciting. And I want to share with you just a little bit more about Bruce Lipton's work before we get into my 5 keys to maximize wellness. Bruce Lipton says that his research on this was what prompted him to also sort of assess what was called the Human Genome Project. Has anyone heard of that? Human Genome Project? You heard about that?
You told me about it.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting. He found that the venture capitalists, he thought it was a humanitarian effort at first. And so they wanted to figure out, how many genes made up a human. And they thought it was going to be well over 150,000 genes. So, but what happened was, he learned that venture capitalists funded this study. And the study was to essentially gain access to identifying all these different markers in your genotype to make drug patents, basically to sell to drug companies, to make drugs for all these different diseases. And it was thought to be that there was going to be at least 150,000 of them, surely, because we're so complex as humans. What they found out was that we have somewhere between the number of genes as a fruit fly and a worm. Somewhere between we have about 25,000, and I think it's the fruit fly is 18,000, and the worm, the simple worm, at 24,000, something like that. So we're a little more than that. 25,000 was what they found, and so they made this big announcement that we've successfully identified the human genome, but they failed to discuss the missing 125,000 genes, and so it was a flop, right, as far as drug manufacturing goes. But still you're left with the sort of the obvious conclusion then, right? We must be greater than the sum of our parts. How else can you explain that we as humans have the same number of genes as a fruit fly? Right? So something's going on there. something, we must be greater than the sum of our parts. Which means that our health isn't only about what we can see and measure. You know, and the body's function isn't just about what we can see and measure and do randomized controlled double-blind studies for. You know? So I have that article for you guys to read. To me, that's one of the most important things, because it points to this whole thing about, you know, if it's not about the gene, and it's about, you know, the way the cell membrane interacts with its environment, then we have a lot of influence on that. And he says the fact remains that there isn't a single thing, there isn't a single physical part of your body, of your being, that isn't in the cell. So all we are is this massive collection of that. And that the cell membrane is the brain. So it houses all these little computer programs called our genes. And the genes respond to the environment that we put it in. And that would explain a lot. It explains how you can have identical twins with the same genes, identical twins, and one gets cancer and the other one doesn't. Right? So my goal or mission is to lead as many people toward greater health and away from disease as possible. Please take this information and work toward that end, share it with your friends and family, and begin to see how your actions can change your life. So in order for us to change the way we behave, we must first change the way we think. If we can do that, we can change the way we feel about life's challenges, and then our actions will change. This is a matter of reprogramming ourselves, not an easy task, but perhaps the most critical if we are to change our health and improve our lives. The following is a brief synopsis of various articles, books, and studies that I believe help us realize more clearly where our health comes from and how modern science is leading us back to an appreciation of nature. Kind of a funny paradox there. Of how simple choices over time can either lead us closer to our optimum state of health or bring us much more rapidly toward disease. So the nature of our health, where does it come from? Compelling new science is leading us to understanding that we as humans, unlike any other animal, are much greater than the sum of our parts. Bruce Lipton's work on cellular biology is teaching that the cell's membrane is the brain, not the nucleus, and therefore our cellular environment dictates our health. The environment dictates our health. And you know what's funny is Albert Einstein all those years ago said, the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle. He didn't say the nucleus of the particle. It's the field. It's the energy that the particle's in. So removing the following interference. The 5 keys to maximizing wellness involve removing the following interference to normal body function: physical, chemical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. The physical, removing physical interference, includes special attention to the spine, obviously, in its relationship with the nervous system. What we as chiropractors refer to as the vertebral subluxation complex, VSC. Abnormal spinal alignment, spasticity, deformed ligaments, chronic inflammation, basically tissue disease. That's very palpable. You can see it. I can see it. I can tell a lot of times just by looking at you guys where you're going to hurt, what's not right. You know, you can see the body trying to adapt to its environment. From somebody, you know, who's sitting all day. You know, you can see the nature. If you're somebody who's driving all day and you come in, this is your posture. You know, you can see these manifestations in the physical body. Chemical, removing toxicity from the diet, critical to remove known toxins, heavy metals, GMOs, right, genetically modified organisms, artificial sweeteners and flavors, dyes, etc. Special attention toward learning to eat organically and drinking lots of pure water. We talk about that all the time, right? You just got the filter. It's good. Mental. Learning how to think positively, reprogramming yourself for success in life and health. Great books on this include work from Dr. Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Bruce Lipton, Candace Pert, Anthony Robbins. Without proper attention to this aspect of our health, the positive effects of everything else we do are diminished. Candace Pert, some of you guys may have heard me say something about her, I think in the last class. She wrote the book Molecules of Emotion. And so the mental emotional thing is fascinating to me too. It's kind of like what we were just talking about. But she said, she did these studies where there were these water molecules